Hello, everyone. Today we are continuing on with our clause endings. We've been talking about them a lot recently, and this is the last one that we'll have for a while. We're going to talk about supposition, which is just a fancy way of saying, I suppose. It's things that you are talking about, things that you think will probably happen or might happen. Whatever it is that is something you can't say with absolute certainty. There's not a 100%, this is the way it's going to be. You can use these things for supposition. And we're going to talk about three, I guess technically three, although the first two are very tightly linked. We're going to talk about daro, daro to mo, and kamoshirenai, which I love using. So let's jump into it. Quick question before we tap onto the next page. We've actually kind of learned about daro before, or we've learned about its cousin. Does anyone know what the more polite form of daro is? Yes, thank you. Desho. Desho. Desho is one that we've learned before. And daro is it's not coarse, it's just the more casual form. But at the same time, you can also see it being used in more polite situations, and we'll see. So daro is desho's slightly more casual sibling. And it's used to express uncertainty. And that word, don't get misled by that. We're not adding a negative uncertainty. You might think of that and think negative. As in, I'm not sure and that's a bad thing. It doesn't necessarily mean that. When we say uncertainty, we simply mean we're talking about something that is not 100%. But we're talking about things that are closer to 100% than not. So I don't think I've ever seen a list that says, okay, if we're talking about probability, which of these words which percent, perhaps, probably, might, certainly, definitely, but in the Japanese form. I haven't seen it, but if I had to guess, if I had to not guess, but, give you a number, I'd say that daro is probably in the 60 to 90% range. Now, this is not right or wrong. It's just kind of a rough feel to let you know. Daro is when you're talking about something that you have a good amount of confidence, but you still don't know. You don't know for sure. Either because you don't have all the information, or, feeling wise, you're just not confident in it, but you just don't have it all yet. That's where daro is coming in. Oh, and like I mentioned here, there's not a single word that can be used. Sometimes we say probably, sometimes we say I think, which, you might be thinking, well, wait, we already have an I think. We have tomo. This is another way. You might use it to say it seems or I wonder, but it's all pushing on something in that 60 and 90% range, saying, yeah, this is probably the case, but I'm not 100% sure. The formation of it is very simple. And interestingly, you might be looking at this daro, and you might be inclined to do this. You might be saying, wait, that's da and ro, right? So the da only comes in places where we usually have da, but that's not true. So let's look at the screen. If you are listening to a forecast for the weather and they say, tomorrow, ashita wa ame desho, which is what they say because they'd be polite. You could say, if you were speaking to your friend, ashita wa ame daro, and you just add that daro. Wherever the desho was, the daro comes in. So that makes it interesting. Look at the second one. Yasui desho. Yasui daro. So it's not yasui ro, it's yasui daro. Hima daro, kuru daro. You just basically throw it on the end of anything that you're attaching it to. Now, let me step aside because I know a lot of people are interested in dialects in Japan and the way that different people say things. There is, if you get even more casual, you can say this. Daro. So if we made a list of polite to casual, it would probably look something like this. Desho is the most polite. Desho is a bit more casual. Daro is more casual, and then daro is the most casual. Now, even more interesting, some of you know this, I live in Niigata Prefecture, which is in the northwest chunk of Japan, about 2 hours northwest of Tokyo if you're going by Shinkansen. And I have met people here, older people, and I believe it's a dialect of the area that they live in, but they won't say daro. They say this, ro. So my favorite is if a standard Japanese speaking person said idaro, they'd say this, iro, which is fun to say. And I'm not sure how much this tracks throughout the rest of Japan, but I've definitely heard it a lot here in Niigata. So just wanted to throw that out to you. Okay, so we are just attaching it to the ends of these verbs, or verb, adjective, noun, whatever happens to be. And again, we're using this to show uncertainty, but still a low amount of uncertainty. We're fairly sure. We have a decent amount of confidence that something happens to be the case. So let's practice. Think about something in the future, or it can either be something in the future or it can be something that you don't know about, but you have a feeling. So, I could say, no one truly knows what the weather will be like, but I'm guessing based on how it looks, I'm going to say this. 明日は暑いだろう. Or if you are following the Olympics, or not following, so it hasn't started yet, but if you follow the Olympics when it starts in a couple of weeks, and you are talking about let's say basketball, you might, wrong character. You might say something like this. And I really don't know how America's team is, so if I'm wrong, if they're really weak, please don't correct me. But you might say this, バスケはアメリカが勝つだろう. Yeah, I think America's going to win. America will probably win, kind of thing. So these are about the future, and / they're also about things we just don't know. So you could also say, you're looking at a movie poster, and you're looking at it, and based on the poster, you're like, that's probably a scary movie. あの映画は怖いだろう. I think it's scary. It's probably scary. So, as you can see, the usage is extremely simple. So let's practice. Think about something. It can be later today. Talk about the weather. Talk about what you think someone else will do. You usually don't use this to talk about your own actions. So you probably wouldn't say this, for example. Let me give you a touch. This you probably wouldn't use. If you're talking about yourself, you'd probably use the tomo, I think. I think I'll go to bed at 9. But outside of yourself, outside of first person, you can use this for a wide range of things. If you can't think of anything else, just tell me, what do you think the weather will be tomorrow where you are? Think it'll be hot? Do you think it'll be cold, windy, sunny, cloudy, snowing? You can talk about expected reactions to something. You know, like I mentioned, the movie is scary. You might say, "Oh, I bet that restaurant is good. I bet that pizza is delicious. I bet that test is hard. I think that test will probably be hard." Someone's talking about tea. Maybe they're looking at some tea. I don't think they're talking about tea in general. They're saying, "Yeah, tea's probably great." But they might be at a store and they see some tea and they're like, "Oh, that tea looks good. I bet that tea is really good." Someone's talking about something they see in the sky. And they're like, "Yeah, it's probably an airplane." Someone else is talking about their younger sister being not busy. Of course, they don't know. It's a prediction. They're like, "Yeah, I'm pretty. I think my little sis will not be busy tomorrow." But excellent examples. Thank you to everyone. Now let's keep going. This next one, this one will be very easy to go talk about. Look at this. Darotomo. So we just took this thing that we talked about, meaning I think, or seems, or probably, and then we're going to add the same thing to it. Darotomo. I think. So the answer's on the next panel, but any guesses as to what this does? It doesn't change the meaning. You're still using it to show a general 60 to 90% feel about something. But what do you think toomo does to the sentence? It doesn't change the meaning, but it changes the feeling. It changes something else about it. Any ideas as to what you think it might change? It doesn't really have to do with the personal. No, it's not. Although that's a really good guess. It's a really good guess. Because daro, it's already coming from a personal. It's already coming from you. Daro is what you're taking and saying, I think it's probably this. Unsure. Again, these are all good guesses. Excellent guesses. It's not quite that. Remember, daro is a casual form. On top of that, if you just I this is just me. This is my head canon. But it sounds kind of rough. Daro. It's that strong da on it. So it is softening up the sentence. It is making it, and if you think of a sentence as a punch of information, you're softening that punch a little bit. You're still saying the same thing. You're just made, in a sense, it is more polite. It can be more polite because you're stepping back from it. In the same way that sometimes in English we sometimes link together. It might possibly be so and so. Why did we say might possibly? That's you're saying the same thing, but you're weakening it a little bit. And there's so many things in Japanese that we've learned some of so far, where you weaken a sentence somewhat, so you don't. You can be more polite, or you might do it so you are protecting the feelings of whoever you're talking to, and whatnot. So let's look at some examples to see, what it sounds like. It also, as it mentions, Japanese, or not Japanese, but the culture in Japan, it doesn't punish. Well, maybe it does, but you are rewarded more for hedging your thoughts. You don't say "I think this" and you say it with conviction, and a lot of things that are seen as positives in many other countries. It's better to pull back. It's like, well, I mean, I think that so and so. You don't want to seem too strong. It can come across as arrogance, and like this, like the last person mentioned, it kind of cuts out the possibility for other people to say anything. So, 今日は雨だろうと思う. Same sentence as before. I think it's going to rain today. I think it might rain today. But it does sound a bit more polite. On top of that, you are softening the blow. And I'm using that to make it sound like it's an attack, and because it could be. And with this, you can soften it. So someone that wanted to go out, and you're like, well, I think it might rain today, so I don't think we're going to be able to go out. It softens it up a little bit, makes it a bit more polite. The second one, you can probably pick up on the meaning. このペンは安いだろうと思う. So, you're softening it up. You might be pulling back on your perceived confidence about what you're saying. Or, whatever it is, just to weaken that up. Like Renshu was saying, it might be a feeling, you're weakening it up, your sentence, because it's something that you're hoping for. So it's almost like you're weakening it for yourself, but you're just pulling back on it a little bit. Now, these two examples use tomo, and you will often see it in textbooks as tomo or daro tomo. However, there's nothing that says, hey, it needs to end like that. You can use tomotta, tomoimasu. And actually, the second sentence, oh wait, we'll get to that in a sec. So let's look at these two. So this one, since we're talking about in the past tense, we're talking about what we thought would be true. Why would we mention this? Because it's not the case. You only mention what you thought something might be if it wasn't, typically speaking. So, oh, I thought today, you'd be free. I guess you're not. Or you could be speaking about yourself. It's like, I'm sorry, I thought I would be free, but I'm really busy today. Now this last one actually drops out the daro, which would work as well. あの人は来ない. You could say 来ないだろうと思います. You could also say 来ないと思います. And I'll probably add the daro in there later on. They both work, but I think that would make the lesson just a bit clearer. So I'll toss that in there afterwards. So that's daro. There's not too much depth to it, but it is something you hear often. So I hope you're able to start using it. Now, this is just not because I think it's objectively better or it means something different, but it's just one that I like using. I don't know why, it just, I always find myself saying it. So let's jump into the next one. Kamoshirenai. Now this one it's an interesting phrase in that there's a few different ways you see it. I'm not quite sure which forms Renshu is going to mention, but you'll see it in a number of different ways. Like you hopefully are getting used to, we mention it here in the casual form, the nai form, although that doesn't have to be the way that we see it. So real quickly, because all the examples in Renshu are going to show it in the kamoshirenai, it could be this. It could be kamoshiremasen. It's a bit more polite, more standard Japanese. Kamoshirenai is the one that we have on the screen. Any guesses as to what the more casual form of it is? There's one more step down. Polite, standard is kamoshiremasen. A bit casual is kamoshirenai. What's the next one? Kamo. Yes, it's just kamo. Which, and you'll see what this means later on, I love saying ikamo. It's a fun thing to say. All right, let's see how we use it. Before daro, we were focusing on the positive uncertainty, as in the closer to 100% than 0. This one is flipping it around. Kamoshirenai is closer to 0. It's not closer to 0 as in it probably won't happen. It's not that. It's less than 50%. So might, maybe, perhaps. All of these are fairly weak words in Japanese, or in English. And so if we are using them in English, might, if you say, I might be able to play tomorrow, I don't think most people would put that over 50%. I'm going to say 20 to 40. Roughly. And that's where kamoshirenai works. Like before, we're talking about clause endings. And so anything that can act as a sentence, we can throw kamoshirenai onto the end of it. Miru kamoshirenai, samui kamoshirenai, honto kamoshirenai, hon kamoshirenai. No special changes. It's just like daro. Remember, we took daro and we just stuck it on the end of everything. And this one is exactly the same. So what's the first one mean? It's like you might see something, as in, oh, you're going to the park, you're going to the zoo tomorrow. Are you going to see the panda? I might see it. Or what about tomorrow? Is it going to be cold? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe it's going to be cold. You might be using this to describe to a student or to your child, well, it might be cold in the afternoon, so why don't you bring your jacket? You don't need it right now. It's warm enough, but it might get colder. I'm not sure, but it might. So go ahead and bring a jacket to be safe. Honto kamoshirenai sounds like you're talking about, maybe a rumor. It's like, well, it might be true. And then hon kamoshirenai is, I guess, if it's in the dark and you can't see something clearly and you're wondering, what is that? Well, it might be a book. Or, what's that person working on? Are they writing something over there? Yeah, it might be a book that they're writing. But we're looking at less than 50% for these. So let's take a look at some examples and then we'll practice a little bit and then we'll wrap things up for today. 明日映画を見るかもしれない. So tomorrow I might see a movie. And just like before, we were talking about those other forms. You could say, 明日映画を見るかもしれません. Be a bit more polite. Or we could go all the way down and say, 明日映画を見るかも. Yeah, I might see a movie. Yeah, I might. You're not sure. It's a possibility, but you're not saying that it's definitely no. You're not saying it's definitely yes either. This next one, next week. Next week is so far away. Who knows what's going to happen? It might be cold next week. You might, it might be because you have just a feeling, or you're using it to plan what clothes you need to wash or get in the suitcase if you're going on a trip. How about this one? This is using that verb nominalization. 聞いたことは本当かもしれない. So that thing I heard about, it might be true. But again, you're not sure. And lastly, this is, we're pretending that Kal-chan's alive and among us. And there's a book over there. And we're like, wait, what book is that? Whose book is that? And they say, well, that might be Chan's book. That might be Kal-chan's book. Not sure. It might be because I saw Kal-chan over there earlier. But I'm not really sure. Maybe. So you can see that they're used in almost the same way. It's just, let's recap real fast. Daro, and then the tomo. I'm going to, again, please don't go out and say, Michael of Renshu is saying that these are the percents and everything else is wrong. It's just trying to give you a ballpark for these. Daro tomo is when you're closer to a positive certainty, 60, 90% up in that area. Kamoshirnai, it could be lower, it could be 10, it could be 50, but you're on the lower half of things. So let's practice this a little bit before we wrap things up today. Oh, before we do that, so I told you before my favorite thing to say, one of my favorite things to say is ikamo, because it's like, it might be good. So maybe I'm talking to my wife about going to the park tomorrow. It's Saturday, the kids will be off, and she might say, hey, how about the park? I said, that might be good. Ikamo. It's short to the point, and it contains so much information in just 4 characters. Okay, let's practice. So it can either be about yourself, it can be in the weather, the country you live in, the world. What's something that you think might happen, but you're not particularly confident in it? And again, it can go as close to 0 as you want. So, this might I hope this isn't the case, but you might say something like this. Maybe you're trying to convince someone to do something daring, like go on this really scary roller coaster, and you say, well, the world might end tomorrow, so ride this roller coaster with me. 明日は世界が終わるかもしれない. So what are some things you think might happen? Could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. Doesn't matter. I'll give you a couple minutes to try that out. I am talking, but I turned my mic off to drink some water. Oh no. Um, I'm going to back up a minute. Apologies. You guys all heard that, right? I'm just typing things without making comments. So, I was answering the person that had the questions next to their sentence, and I was saying usually you don't talk about your body getting fixed, as in body being cut up. You usually talk about your state, your well-being, and taicho. My first sentence is one way to describe that, and you would say, yokunaru. You're feeling better, you're getting better. You could also sometimes you use nauru when you're talking about like an illness or an injury, but you do have to be careful. The kanji that you used in the first sentence is for something to get better or to get fixed, but it's talking about like objects. If you're talking about an illness getting better, like your person, you, or an animal or whatnot, you use that second kanji. Lastly, you wouldn't. I'm going to use the yokunaru example that I used. I put this. This one works. This one does not work. As to why, te wouldn't work anyway, but here's how you think about this is we're talking about clause endings. And sentences are clauses. So think about how a sentence would end. Would we ever end a sentence in yokunatte? Not really, unless you're speaking in a specific casual form. You would take a sentence ending, the end of the sentence, and you'd slap kamoshirenai onto that. But yes, thank you for telling me that I was speaking into a muted mic. It hasn't happened in at least a year, so I guess it was about time for that to happen again. Uh, Kamo is not a verb. I'm actually not sure exactly what kamo is. Um, Shiranai is a verb, but kamo is not. Kamo is kamo. Yeah, that's a really good question. As to what the actual verb is, like where's that verb base? Let me show you something. Let me pull Renshu out real fast. Oh, John, you can do it. If you look up kamoshirenai, look just beneath the definition, and you see rarely written as kamoshirenai, and you see that kanji. I'm not going to make a leap and try and connect that verb with it, but that's where it's coming from. I'm not the type of person. There are, and there's nothing good or bad with either group. But I'm not the type of person trying to break down every tiny thing. So I usually see kamoshirenai as kamoshirenai. And you can see, it's a single word, and Renshu has over 500 sentences with it because it's very, very common. Anyway, we're wrapping things up for today. How you might need to babysit someone. Ooh, babysitting is it's weird because babysitting doesn't really exist in Japan as that job, but you can whether it's babysitting or something else, you know, you could. Okay, let me break it apart for you. I'm going to use this verb. And let me pull it out, Renshu, for you so you can see it. Probably will come up. Yes. Okay. It's an interesting verb because it doesn't sound negative, but if you look at the actual words, it's not great because mendo is it's part of the word mendokusai, as in like what a bother. Um, but you can use it in I don't feel like there's really a negative nuance to mendo meter. Anyway, so let's use this verb. So you could say this. Let's take the basic sentence and let's expand off of that. So you can just look at this. Akachan, oh, and it's not really sorry, it's no. Akachan no mendo miru. So watch after the baby. So this is just your straight up sentence. Now, you could say this. Let's take that, let's add some to it. We could take this new thing that we're learning. Now this is not what you want, but we're getting there. Akachan no mendo miru kamoshirenai. So this is saying just I might watch after the baby. You, however, sound like you want to say I might have to do that. So you need to show that necessity. So you might say something minakia naranai. Or let me not crunch it down too much. Minakereba. It's getting longer, and there's lots of nais in there. There's 3 negative verbs in one sentence. Akachan no mendo minakereba naranai kamoshirenai. And for those of you that aren't real comfortable with these yet, I promise you, I'm not trying to gaslight you, but these longer strings, especially when you're dealing with like have to or must and whatnot, you internalize them as like a single chunk. So I don't really think of minakereba naranai as all those different syllables. I just think of it as the verb stem, and then nakereba naranai. And you'll internalize that as a big chunk, and then it's no longer 13,000 characters. It's just this and this. I promise you that day will come, but until it does, you are making yourself say every single character until you remember it, and you trip over all of them. It's a step that we all go through, so don't feel too bad about that. But that was a good question. Any other questions before we wrap things up? We're almost done for today. You could Obasa oh, but you probably it would be not ni. Um, and looking that gives the nuance of you're not really talking about going to see Obasa. You're focusing on the looking at them. And which I don't think is the intention. It's like I need to watch grandmother to make sure she doesn't run away. You're probably aiming for maybe I need to go see her. or go meet with, not meet, because that's a bit formal, but go see her. And go see her is in the meet sense, as in travel from where you are to where they are to see them and then talk with them or whatever. So and that might, if you're doing that, it's probably closer, if I can type correctly. Something along those lines. Well, if she needs assistance, you would still, miru just by itself is just look. You're focusing on the physical action of your eyeballs looking at something. So you might, I wouldn't say that. I'd probably say help. Because you mentioned assistance, I just go with help. Tetsudao. Tetsudao wa nakereba naranai. It's easier, and you're not. There's no chance of you slipping into any unintended nuances of, oh, grandma, she's such a pain, I have to watch her. Because I presume you don't want to say that. But just saying, I need to help. I might need to help her. It's straight up clean. No hidden meanings. Nakya, yes, is, I mean, that's jumping into a different topic of all the different ways you can say you have to do something, but you could use nakya, minakya, minakya kamo, minakya naranai kamo. The only it the meaning gets across, and this is just um this is just my feeling of, after hearing Japanese for so long. I probably wouldn't trim down minakya and then have kamoshirenai at the full length. It's weird that you're chopping off one, but you're making the other. So I'd probably say minakya naranai kamo. I chop off the last part. And you could do minakya naranai kamoshirenai. That's also fine. But if you wanna chop, I chop off the end. It wouldn't. You definitely wouldn't be misunderstood. It wouldn't break that up, but it could. It feels like a bit, a small bit of dissonance in there. Anyway, I think we're done. So thank you all so much for your questions, example sentences. They were really good today. And yeah, this lesson will be up on Renshu as well as inside the Discord, hopefully later today, if you need to go back and look at it again. So thank you so much, and お疲れ様でした。